Hi, hello everybody. Merit Skovic here with Sabrina Paganoni. For those of you who have been coming to our weekly meetings, I welcome you back, and anyone who's new, I welcome you to this group. At our last meeting, we got some great feedback from everybody, and in particular, asking if we could post some of the frequently asked questions on our website so that they can always be up there for people, and we can move to like new questions, and if we can post things like enrollment numbers. And so the answer to all of that is yes, and we want to. We do have to, because the study is under the purview of Institutional Review Board for Ethics. We do need to have those materials IRB approved, so we have submitted them, thanks to Sabrina and the team. And as soon as those are kind of approved, which shouldn't take too long, we will post them. So I'm sorry that we can't have them up by today, but hopefully by the next week's call. With that, I'll pass it to Sabrina to lead.
Thank you. Thank you, Merit, and thanks everyone for joining. So I know that there's a few people who have been following us every week, but we always get many new people. So thank you, welcome to all of you who are new. And so we're gonna, with that, if you can move to the next slide, we always have, for these short weekly meetings, we have a very short agenda, very short slide deck. We want to leave most of the time for your questions. So we'll just briefly review what the trial is about, our enrollment updates, which keep changing every week in a good direction, which is great, as well as site activation updates that also keep changing in a good direction. And just a few words about the patient navigator and how to contact us. And again, most of the time will be spent on answering your questions. I know we answered some of the same questions. We're working, as Merit said, on posting a frequently asked questions section, and we'll do that as soon as it's approved by our ethics committee, known as the IRB. Next slide. So for those of you who are new, we are doing this work to accelerate the development of new treatments for ALS. Next slide. And we're doing that by testing multiple drugs at the same time. Now, we opened the platform in July with treatments A, B, and C, and we're actually about to add number 4, or treatment D. So I think this is the last time I'm gonna use the slide in this format with only A, B, and C, because we will be adding D very soon. Next slide. So we started basically with regimens A, B, and C, zilucoplan, verdiperstat, and CNM-Au8, and we're gonna add pridopidine over the next few weeks. The way that the trial works is that every participant is assigned to any of the drugs that are active in the trial at that time. So right now it's 3 drugs, it's gonna be 4 very soon, and we will continue to add drugs next year. Every drug is tested and given to 160 people. There is a placebo component, but it's much smaller than other trials because the randomization is 3-to-1 active to placebo. So what that means is that for every 4 people that enter the trial, 3 will go on active and only 1 on placebo. The placebo control period is 24 weeks, or about 6 months, and then there is the option for open label extension at the end of the study. For everyone who completes the study, they can opt to stay on drug, active drug, long term. So again, we're really excited to have started with these treatments that were all selected by an expert committee of ALS scientists based on promising preclinical and clinical data. So we're very excited about the drugs that are in the trial, and again, we will continue to add very soon. Next slide. Now, the exciting part, as of today, we have 139 individuals with ALS who signed informed consent, and 80 are currently on study drug. Again, most of them are on active, and a small number of them is on placebo. And we will continue to update the ALS community. We are also getting approval for a graph, so we will continue to improve our materials and communicate these updates with all of you. Next slide. During a previous webinar, it was asked that we share the names of the sites that are actively enrolling, and so we have been doing that, so thank you for that question and suggestion. Since last week, we activated 2 new sites, Cedars-Sinai and University of Florida at Gainesville, so welcome to those new sites. So now we have 27 sites that are actively enrolling, and the list is on our website. Next slide. And once again, I just wanted to introduce Catherine Small and Alison Pogge-Miller, who recently joined our team. serving as the patient navigator. So many of you may have been in contact with them. Please contact them at their phone number and email, and they will serve as the central point of contact for questions related to the trial. So if you have any questions in addition to the ones that obviously you're going to ask today during the webinar, Catherine and Alison are available to answer your questions and talk to you on the phone for any additional information. Next slide. And this is our website. Our website has many different pages with a lot of interesting information. An important page within the website is the page listing the sites. We selected 54 sites to be part of the trial. 27 of them are actively enrolling. I can assure you that all of the other ones are working very hard to be able to be activated. So we are hoping to activate all of them within the next few weeks. And in addition to that, we will add more on top of the initial 54 over the next few months, because we do want to increase our capacity even more over the next few weeks or months. Next slide. And this is just, again, a plug for our ALS Link newsletter. That's a newsletter that we send out. You can sign up for it on our website to receive information about this trial and other research opportunities. And with that, I think that was just, our weekly update, but I now wanted to open this up for questions. I also want to mention that in addition to our weekly updates, we do a monthly webinar where we describe the trial in greater detail. And so that could be at different times depending on the week, and sometimes we have guest speakers. So it happens to be next week. So I just want you to check our website for the exact time. So we tend to have these weekly updates on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, but the monthly webinars might be at different times. And again, we'll have different speakers we're coming as guests. So, make sure that you check the schedule, because next week we won't be having this webinar, but we will have the larger one with more information about the trial. So please check out the schedule on our website. Great. And with that, I think we can open this up for questions. I believe that in order to ask questions, you can type your questions in your chat or in the question and answer icon. And I don't see questions, which is unusual. Do you see them, Mary? I think you're muted.
No, I don't see any questions yet. Well, oh, there we go.
Yes. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I have also something I can after these questions. Good. So maybe Sabrina, we can do every other one if you want.
Oh.
Yeah, we can read it too, and then.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure.
Okay. Is a person eligible for the trial if they're unable to swallow medicines?
No, for this trial, all participants need to be able to swallow the medications. So again, it's okay if there are some changes to the swallowing function, but the participants need to be able to swallow the medication.
There's a question about how can PALS help with spreading the word about trials? So thank you for this question, and I have to say that PALS are already spreading the word, and that's why I think enrollment is good. There's a couple ways. I mean, I think one is through this group called IMALS, which many of you probably know about and are part of. They have a great network of how to get the word out to other patients, and same with other foundations, ALS Association. But I think just so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel, I would probably reach out to the IMALS group, and I'm sure that they'll be very happy to get your help. There's a question, Sabrina, about anything about C9, maybe.
Yeah, so people who have C9 can participate. C9 related ALS can participate in the trial. The medications that we are including in the trial are thought to be broadly applicable, to all forms of ALS. There's no restriction, so people can participate. I do recognize that there are other trials that are not part of the platform trial that are specifically targeted to C9, and so obviously that would be another excellent option for someone who has C9 ALS, because those will be targeted more specifically to that specific gene.
And the question of why limit participation to the trial for only 2 years onset. So first thing is that that's actually not the cutoff, but I'm glad that you asked, because we want to make that really clear. So the cutoff for the HEALEY ALS platform trial is 3 years from symptom onset. And we spend a lot of time with these amazing statisticians that that are helping us, and a large data set that we had put together called PROACT from about 10,000 people who've been in ALS trials. And they could use that data to model how many people would you need in the trial if you had a 2-year cutoff versus a 3 versus a 4. And the longer that time period, the more people that you need in the trial to see if it works or not, because the difference between people gets much bigger, what we call heterogeneity. So the 3 years was kind of the longest we could go to be able to get an answer in 6 months with a reasonable size study, which was 160, so that we could get quick answers for everybody. But we have heard from our patient advisory group and our patients and all of you how important it is to have options for people who might be outside those windows. And for that reason, we are really doing a lot of work to launch a parallel expanded access program for people who are not eligible. And we're hoping that'll be up and running in early 2021. We realize that that still seems like far away, but we are working as hard as we can to get that funded and started. We do have some commitments from 2 companies for their drugs. So question for you, Sabrina, when does regimen D begin?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we actually had IRB approval today as of a few hours ago. So that's fantastic news. We got clearance from the FDA to begin, and we got approval from the IRB, which is the ethics committee that governs or has the oversight over the trial. And that's fantastic news. I would add that the approval process was incredibly efficient. I think the fastest that we have ever seen in any trial. And that's because the IRB is already familiar with the master protocol. So the IRB already knows about the trial and has already reviewed essentially, 90%, 99% of the entire structure. I mean, everything except the new regimen. And so when we add the new regimen, that's that, 10% or whatever, there's new addition that they have to review, but it's only a small addition. And so they can process it faster. So faster than anything that we have seen before. So it was a really phenomenal example of the efficiencies of the trial. In a way, we just started, we just launched this with the first 3, and now we're adding number, 4, and just this experience of adding a new regimen tells us that it's really an efficient process. So essentially, now that we have had all the approvals, now we had actually the investigator meeting, which is the way we train all the sites to be knowledgeable and be well equipped to run the trial. Actually, we finished today. So that was a major week where we got approval and we got all the trainings done. So everyone now is familiar with the process. There's a few administrative steps that still need to be done, because every site needs to process some documents to be able to actually be part of this. So to make a long story short, we think we're going to begin enrolling very soon. I think in December at the latest. So essentially, it's going to happen before the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, I really wanted that question because it was such good news, but it was Sabrina's turn. Thank you for asking. I do want to say that I've never seen a protocol get approved that fast, and it's exactly what we predicted would happen with this platform trial. So usually, if you start a study, it might take 60 days to get an IRB approved. The ethics review board approval study. This was probably shouldn't say the exact number, but less than 2 weeks, and it just amazing. And so that poor Sabrina, I kind of texted her, I think we got to write this up in the paper right away, because if pharma companies see that, they're going to want to flock to be part of this. But we have a few other papers we got to write before that one, but thanks for asking. So the next question is, are asymptomatic gene carriers able to participate? So a really good question. So not for this study, but because this study is taking people who are symptomatic. But I think that we need to be, and I know the field is already thinking about this, we need to be designing trials for asymptomatic gene carriers, prevention trials. And so Katie Nicholson, who works with us, and Tim Miller at WashU have a study called DIALS for people who are gene carriers to collect enough information so that we, when there's a good drug ready to test in asymptomatic gene carriers, we know how to do it and we can do it well. And obviously some of the gene therapy trials that are already enrolling symptomatic people with genetic forms of ALS are thinking about how to do that in asymptomatic gene carriers. So I think the field is ready, getting ready for that. So this is for you, Sabrina. My sister has ALS. She's taking TUDCA. Can she still be in the trial?
So we have a short list of exclusionary medications and supplements, and TUDCA is one of them. The reason for that is because TUDCA is considered an investigational product or an experimental medicine for ALS at this time, meaning it's still in trials. So our guidance is that whenever a drug is approved by the FDA, such as Riluzole or Edaravone, for example, they're not exclusionary. People can take them because they are approved by the FDA. But anything that's in trial, that's been tested in a different trial at this time is exclusionary because it would affect, essentially, it would confound the results of the drugs that we're testing. And so we wouldn't be able to tell if the new drug is effective or not.
Thank you. There's a question, what can we learn about progress as the trial participants take the drugs? So that's a really good question. And that's part of the reason we're going to have these weekly calls. So we can definitely share about enrollment numbers. There are interim looks at the data for mainly for safety. They're called futility looks. So if a drug isn't safe, or if there's, you know, a no chance or low chance that it's going to succeed, it can be stopped early. And if that happened, we would be able to share it. But data on whether it's working or not is not, no one sees that until the study is over, which is when the last participant in an arm finishes their 6 months of follow-up. And that's another reason why we try to design the studies so that they are reasonable size to get the answer, but they're not so big that it takes much longer to get the answer for everybody. This is for you, Sabrina. Are people with slow progression eligible to participate in the trial?
So we don't measure the progression. We don't have a cutoff in terms of numbers to measure that. So as you may know, some trials had a lead-in or observation period prior to enrollment, where people were measured over time, and then depending on their progression were included or not. So we don't have that in this trial. We do have some inclusion-exclusion criteria that limit sort of the defined enrollment based on certain clinical criteria. And so there is a, for example, time since onset is 3 years, as mentioned earlier. So again, we don't measure the rate of progression in each individual prior to enrollment, but there are other inclusion-exclusion criteria for statistical reasons, as Merit explained earlier.
So there's a question about a new announcement that just came out about the MND SMART trial in Glasgow, Scotland. Is this new? Can you expand on it? Yeah, and I know a lot about this because one is yesterday morning, I think at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we did a webinar where the 3 groups that are doing these new innovative type trials, which are not all platform trials, but they're all kind of new initiatives presented on it. And also about 2 years ago, when we were starting our plans, we talked to our colleagues in Europe, Scotland, and also other parts of Europe about what we were doing, heard what they're doing. And so I just wanted people to know that we're collaborative, and I think each approach is different and going to add value to the field. So the group in Scotland is doing a study where there's 3 arms, 2 drugs and 1 placebo, and they're making every drug liquid. So, and they're going to use that 1 placebo group to compare to both of the drugs. And the drugs are trazodone, is one of them. And now I'm blanking on what the other one is. But they're 2 repurposed drugs. So they're the drugs available on the market for other reasons. And they also have very broad inclusion criteria. They're basically taking almost all comers in Scotland and UK. So, so that's their kind of design. And then their hope would be to keep adding drugs over time and keep using that 1 placebo group. But they're making all the drugs look the same, and they're not taking, at this point, new drugs from like pharma companies like ours are. They're repurposing drugs. There is another one too that hasn't started yet, that is from a group called TriCals. And they're also repurposing existing drugs. One of them is lithium and one's Triamec. And they're doing a survival study. So long follow-up, simple follow-up, but they are looking at survival. And then of course you heard about ours. Ours is 6 months. and taking, we're not doing repurposed drugs, we're taking drugs from pharma companies. But the good news is they're all different drugs, and we're sharing information, and we're learning from each other, and it's exciting to see all this innovation all over the world. We'll have to wait to see what platform trial comes out of Asia. They also have a great trial group. So there's a question here for you, Sabrina. I'm wondering if you have seen an increase in ALS cases in general or specifically in a region of the country.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So my understanding, based on work that colleagues are doing, is that with the aging of the population, the expected incidence of ALS is going to increase because obviously, age is a risk factor for the disease. And so in a sense, I think we're going to continue to see an increase in cases as the population continues to age. In terms of hotspots, if that was part of the question, or perhaps some signals or specific areas that might see kind of an unexpected number of cases. I'm not aware of any recent hotspot that's been of particular interest. Obviously, there's a few that have been under the radar for a while for different possible environmental causes or other reasons. And so I think investigators continue to monitor that. As you know, there's different programs. Well, in Massachusetts, we have actually a statewide registry that's funded by the state, where each county, each area is actually monitored very carefully. And then there's obviously the CDC registry and other efforts that are looking into the epidemiology.
And I'll take the question about FVC. The question is, are there any exclusionary criteria around breathing tests of FVC? And there is. It's lower than most trials. It's 50%. We're silent about BiPAP use. So if people's breathing is better than 50% or higher and they're on BiPAP, that's fine. And again, this was a balance of being able to be more broad and open, but also be able to get an answer about the drug in the 6-month period. Sabrina, if someone joined a little late and wanted, if you could repeat the enrollment numbers.
And maybe we can go back to the slide, if you can, Catherine, to the enrollment numbers. So it's 139 individuals have signed master protocol consent, and 80 are on study drug. And so if you remember from the previous weeks, every week we do better, so that's great.
It's really amazing, and I just thank all of you and everybody interested in this and getting the word out. This is really faster than really any ALS trial, an ALS trial history. So, and it does mean we'll get the results faster. So it's really good news. Can a person take, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but I know what it is, Bunagao at the same time as they participate in the trial?
Yes, and I think the same person specified that it's a Chinese tea. Yeah. Later in the chest. So yes, it's not considered, it's not in trial for ALS at this time that we know of, and so yes, it would not be exclusional.
Yeah. So the question, who is the contact at University of Colorado for the platform trial? And I believe that is Laura Foster is the MD.
It is, yeah.
Is the MD.
And Brianna is the coordinator. The contact is on the website. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. If you haven't been selected for the platform trial, is there still a chance to participate? Sabrina, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so when you say selected, I'm not sure what you mean exactly. So I guess if somebody is screened, signs informed consent and is screened and for whatever reason cannot be part of the trial because there are some exclusionary criteria that are met, then the person could be rescreened at a later date. So for example, sometimes people are on an exclusionary medication, for example, an investigational medication, but there is a washout period. So if you are screened and you cannot enter the trial because you are on a different investigational medication, but that stopped after a washout period of a few days, somebody can be rescreened. Now, I guess if you say selected, I don't know if you also meant if there isn't a spot available or if the site doesn't get back to the person who is asking. So we're doing everything that we can to really try to have a screening spot. So essentially give that opportunity to be screened formally to everyone who asks. I would say I do want to acknowledge that we are having a tremendous amount of interest, and obviously this is sort of so exciting that the sites are having some difficulties keeping up with all the requests. So I would encourage you to continue to be in touch with your local site and investigator, and of course with the patient navigator as well, so that we can see if we can find ways to get you a screening spot.
Are there platform trial options for a person taking all the meds and food by a feeding tube? And so in this study, because some of our drugs are oral, people do need to be able to swallow the pill at the entry. So again, if somebody can't do that, we wanted to have options for people, and there are other trials that don't have that requirement. So that would be something important to talk to your neurologist about. But also, when we do have this expanded access parallel program, that would be an option for people. For Sabrina, will you discriminate between fast and slow progressors for approval?
No, so that we don't measure the rate of progression on an individual basis for people who are screened for inclusion. And so there are other inclusion-exclusion criteria, but not a specific progression rate.
Yeah, I mean, in the final analysis, we'll obviously look at that kind of stuff, but the primary analysis, which is what's important for approval, is on everybody in the study. So there's a question about Columbia. I'm happy to answer this one because we will be at one of these meetings and say that they're activated. Will Columbia and New York City be up and running as a site soon? And yes, they are very, very close. We were hoping for last week and we're hoping for this week, but it's not this week, it'll be next week. They're super close. They just have a few last things that they need to do, but they're working on it. And we do, in the long run, want to add another New York site. How about this for you, Sabrina? How many phases will these trials be going through?
Well, the great news is that this trial could be considered enough for the registration of a new drug if the results were very positive. In other words, if we test a drug that has great results, this trial could be the only one that's needed to get that drug to market. Obviously, all of that will depend on the results. So again, I think this is considered like a late stage trial. I wouldn't put numbers necessarily because again, for ALS, given the severity of the illness, we really want to make sure that we design trials in a way that if positive, they can get drugs to approval, and that's the way we design this trial.
So this question is, I'm a PALS. How do I get into trials if my current clinic is not one of the testing sites? Should I send my pulmonary test results to each site?
Well, I think it's good for you. I would suggest that you contact the patient navigator to help you find a trial site near you. And I'm sorry that the exact city or location is not a great fit, but there might be others nearby or not too far. And so I would suggest that you contact the patient navigator so that they can help you find the best match.
Thanks. Do we want to put that number up again while we're waiting?
Oh yes, if we can scroll to the patient navigator page, Catherine, thank you.
So is there any talk with Amylyx about AMX 035 being part of the platform trial? Maybe Sabrina, you want to answer that?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of discussions about Amylyx and the AMX 35 drug. So I hope that there's going to be, conversations with the FDA very soon, and the outcome could actually be that there is a new drug or a new drug application being accepted, or other ways to get the drug to patients, still collecting data. So I don't know that the participation in this specific trial is needed. So all of that will depend on ongoing conversations with the FDA.
I'm in Houston. My husband didn't qualify because of his low FVC. What do you recommend he do while we wait for expanded access? It's so hard to sit and wait and do nothing. I can try to answer that one. I do think, and I'm happy to help, though I think that, talking to your neurologist, there are always other options. And you're not my patient, so I can't myself help, but I'm happy to talk to your neurologist. But I would start that conversation and ask what the other options are for you. And then there's, let's see, the question about that someone signed up for a few locations but hasn't heard from anyone. And I'm really sorry to hear that. But go ahead, Sabrina.
No, I was going to say thank you for that question. Actually, we were talking about ways to explain the process better, and so we're actually working on some documents to post on the website also in terms of this process of enrollment, how that works and how it works at different sites. But yes, I would agree that we're really working with sites to make sure that they can get back to people and let them know the status, regardless of the answer. People should hear back from the sites. And so the Navigator will continue to work with sites to facilitate that as well.
Okay. And someone wrote that they've called that number, but didn't get, no one got back to them. So that's not good either. So thanks for the feedback. If I might ask you to, I'll write you privately so that I can follow up on that. And then there's a question about if we've ever released results from the clean nanomedicine that is offered in a small EAP. And so no, we have not yet because it's still ongoing. So I'm very happy to have that EAP. It's for up to 30 people. And in that EAP, we're actually studying some important questions that the company need and we need to know about the drug. So it's providing compassionate care, but it's also providing good information, and it's still ongoing. So there, you know, we haven't analyzed any of the results. It really is compassionate use, so there's not a lot of results to analyze. We have some blood work. And obviously we're following safety, but we do plan to write up every one of our EAPs, and in particular about how easy and how wonderful it is to provide EAPs for patients so that we can get that information out to other centers. And I think that's all our questions that I see. That was great. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please send me feedback too about what's useful to hear at these.
Yeah, and we'll definitely draft documents and frequently asked questions. As soon as we have approval, we will post them on the website. And as a reminder, next week, the time of this will be slightly different because it's our monthly webinar with guest speakers. So please check the website, because again, the time might change, you know, depending on whether it's a regular weekly meeting or a monthly meeting. But we look forward to talking with you next week, as always.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.